Morning to all viewers. Today, IAIS Forum will be discussing on COVID-19 vaccine, Halal status and ethical issues in distribution. We are indeed delighted to have with us three distinguished speakers. First, Professor Dr. Zari bin Ismail, Honorary Professor from School of Pharmaceutical Sciences, University Science Malaysia in Penang. Followed by Mr. Amrahi Buang, President, Malaysian Pharmaceutical Society, or MPS, and also Dr. Muhammad Hafiz Mahayuddin, Senior Lecturer of Academy of Contemporary Islamic Studies, University Tuan Haji Mara Shah Alam. Ladies and gentlemen, issues regarding the halal status of the newly developed COVID-19 vaccines arose after an announcement made by Khairi Jamaluddin, the Science, Technology and Innovation Minister, who said that such vaccine will be available during the first quarter of next year. Netizens' concerns regarding the halal status of these vaccines have received myriad responses from authorities, including the Pahang Mufti Abdul Rahman Osman, who said that the halal status of the vaccine is important to ensure peace of mind among Muslims. Consequently, on 7 October, the Halal Development Corporation, HDC, Chief Executive Officer Hairul Arifin Sahari indicated that standards to certify halal vaccines, including for COVID-19, will be available by next year. Other than public health concerns revolving around safety, efficiency, and distribution mechanism, vaccinations also instigate complex socio-religious controversies. While some Muslims feel that it is their right to demand halal vaccines, for others non-Muslims among them, such demand is unnecessary, as for them the main focus of vaccination is safety and efficiency. In terms of distributions, guidelines released by WHO dictate that healthcare workers, the elderly, and the most vulnerable should be prioritized in receiving the first batches of vaccine. Due to receiving the vaccine early next year, Malaysian authorities have announced its willingness to comply with such a proposal. Nevertheless, several ethical concerns were raised. For instance, it is argued that while the elderly would benefit the most from vaccination, prioritizing them may not maximize the overall life-saving mission. Some has argued that allocating more to children who are most responsible for transmitting the COVID-19 virus may confer a greater benefit to society. Therefore, among the ethical discourse of the COVID-19 vaccination education program will be finding the balance between prioritizing individual and societal interests. In discussing these two dimensions of COVID-19 vaccination, the halal status of vaccines and the ethical concerns regarding their distribution, this forum features the three prominent experts from pharmaceutical and religious backgrounds. Okay, we will begin with Prof. Zari. Prof. Zari, from a pharmaceutical perspective, how do you describe the process of developing a halal vaccine? And what are your thoughts on the current development of the COVID-19 vaccines, particularly in terms of their halal status? Prof. Zari, please.
Thank you very much. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Assalatu wassalamu ala syafil mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I'm very grateful that IAIS have given this opportunity for us to talk to the public on a very important issue that is now gathering momentum. And I think we have to resolve this issue very quickly because I think the virus doesn't wait for anybody. They can overrule everybody. So in talking about the vaccine for this COVID-19, we have to make sure that we comply to whatever rulings that's given by the government. And also we can make full use of whatever findings that is now in place. And I think there are lots of communication happening in the net, whether you can get news from either side of the story. You can get the people who are anti-vaccine, the extreme, and then we have the people who doesn't want to care, they just want to follow the Samitna Wata'ana sort of group. But I think in the medical care and also in pharmaceutical care, we have one principle called the concordance principle, the principle of concordance. This principle is already being adopted in UK for the last decade, and it's a principle, it's an approach whereby in prescribing and taking of medicines, there should be an agreement after negotiating between the patient and the healthcare provider. And in that negotiation, we have to respect the beliefs and also the wishes of the patient in how these medicines are to be taken. So I think it goes very well in our argument on this halal aspect of COVID-19. So when we address this particular issue, we are addressing in the spirit of concordance, meaning say that the professionals and also the patient, that means the general public, have to be made known on what are the things that is in offer to them in terms of the COVID-19 vaccines. And I'm also fortunate that we have some news reports, and also we have anticipated in our own Malaysian scenario that we have got this MS2424 2019 standards in place. And I think I need to correct the view from the HDC. We have already what we call put this thing in place, and we have started the standards for halal pharmaceuticals right in 2012, about less than 10 years ago. And in 2019, we have got a new appendix for vaccines. So in that standard, we will present a lot of things that is needed for the industry to 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 be guided, and the requirements for them to produce halal medicines. And probably you might ask, who are the people involved in the committee? Well, it is represented by the people from the industry, the industry in Malaysia, and also the people in the regulatory, the NPRA, and then the academia, and also from the professional association. So there are a mixed uh, qualified people who contribute towards the standards of the MS2424. So uh, we can say confidently that we are going to address the issues concerning the halal status quite uh, what you call quite detailed, and with the understanding of whatever that is in the MS2424. And the other thing that I want to highlight is that in the World Halal seminar held in Turkey in 2018, 2 years ago, in fact, currently they are having their 2020 World Halal seminar. They have declared that they are going into research to produce halal vaccines. So among the declaration is that they want the OIC countries, the Islamic countries, to be involved. And in fact, they have also started a technical committee, TC19, called the Halal Pharmaceutical Issues Technical Committee. And they've asked Malaysia to chair based on the fact that we have got this MS2424 in place. And with that, we have colleagues from Pakistan, from Saudi Arabia, from Turkey, from Indonesia, trying to discuss how we can harmonize the standards pertaining to pharmaceutical, including vaccines. And I think all those documents in place, all the standards in place, I think we can be confident of how we approach this subject of halal medicines or halal pharmaceutical or halal vaccines. Yeah? So in terms of the content which makes it halal or non-halal, I think we have got information that is already in the public domain. And we also have some input from the Ministry of Health, Malaysia, uh, that what are the ingredients, what are the things which constitute the vaccine. And looking into the various vaccines that are in place, there, there are quite a huge number of vaccines that are now working, that are now being worked on by various countries, right from China, Russia, Germany, US, and then UK, and also Japan, and so on. So they have worked on this thing, and each and every one of them have got their own strategy. For example, the one which the Ministry of Health gave us the briefing, they say that the one from China, the Sinopharm, it comes from a inactivated virus, the COVID virus. And then for the AstraZeneca, University of Oxford, they are using the viral vector to deliver the vaccine. And then for the others, like the BioNTech, Pfizer, they use the genetic vaccine, and is others, they use protein-based vaccine. So when you say that they have various strategies to produce the vaccine, and these are things which I think we need to understand whether where does it source from. And I'm very fortunate to have this seminar from Al Balagh website. They have got a what do you call their front end item that talks about how the Muslims should interact with these new vaccines. And they have got this person who is an expert in this area. He's a virologist, and he's been working with WHO and also with the university. And he mentions that uh, for us to have the right attitude, they call the healthy skepticism. Yeah? That means when we receive any news or any data from any sources on trying to explain the nature of the vaccine, we have to be doubly sure. We have to check the what they call the facts. So we have to have this healthy skepticism, and then we have to also to clarify with our ulama, and for the ulama to understand, they need the scientific input. And of course, it's all evidence based, and we have to be make sure that we know the subject matter well before we can make it term it halal or not. And then this is the aspect of informed knowledge that we want the public to be, and therefore uh, we have to make sure that the public is given a chance to have informed decision. That means they know how to decide for themselves based on the evidence and based on the fact that is being given. Yeah. So I think to answer the put this put to us, how are these vaccines? Are they really halal, or how do we make sure that they are halal? Uh, I think as a background, vaccines are a very important component of the medicaments, and they have been at our service for the past decades, and for treating various disease like polio and so on. So they have been very useful in in reducing the disease situation for humans. And also we find that the flu jab, for example, it was given to many people year round. But we find that the flu jab, people who suffer from pneumonia and so on, they are given, and the success rate is, according to the data, is about 50 to 60% success. But this is not so in our COVID C19. From the data that latest facts that we receive, the vaccine for COVID-19, the success is more than 90%. So you can expect good response for those who have been given these vaccines. And of course, we find that uh, due to this, what you call disease, there are a lot of problems, social problems, unemployment, livelihood, and so on. And there's another issue which they keep on harping, that is on the herd immunity, meaning that these people are not vaccinated, but they receive the benefit of the those people who are vaccinated. And to achieve this level, you have to have about 70 to 75% of immunized population. Okay, now back to the central theme, that is what are the constituents, the ingredients of these vaccines, to the extent that can it be termed as halal or non-halal? And we find that from the experts who have been working this area, for them, the source of material to make the vaccines, they are mainly synthesized material. Yeah. In fact, the RNA vaccine is purely synthetic, and they have even used the word halal, and it is vegan. Yeah? And I think these are things which we look forward to, and I think uh, there's no problem in us trying to make a ruling and tell the ulama that look, these are all things which isn't derived from animal tissues; they are purely synthetics. And there's some issues probably that might crop up, yeah? Because looking at the ingredients list from the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, they have this so-called uh, nucleotide modified messenger RNA, mRNA, encoding the virus spike glycoprotein. And these are the active ingredient, and they are what I call synthetically made. And they have the fats or the lipids. The fats or lipids are used to encapsulate, yeah, encapsulate the active ingredient. And these fats sometimes can be a problem if they come from animal sources, but it seems that from the data or from the information given, it is also synthesized. Synthesized material is chemical synthesized. And then other components like salts, they have potassium chloride, sodium chloride, and so on. I think there's no problem. And they have sugars also. So basically, the main ingredient for the manufacture of the active Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, won't be any problem in terms of halal. But for the others, since, as I mentioned just now, their approach a bit different. For example, the Sinopharm, they are using inactivated virus, whole inactivated virus. And then for AstraZeneca, they have viral vector. That means they have virus to be the transporter for this particular vaccine. And then we have also other protein-based vaccine. So we can't make a ruling uh, overall because we need to see the facts in detail individually. So basically, I think there's good news whereby for halal aspect, when we present it to the ulama, we tell them about this good news, and then tell them that how these things made, and using our MS2424 in the appendix, how they are propagated, how they are isolated and purified, and then how they are making to the bulk uh, formulation, and ultimately the final product. Of course, there are other issues, for example, in terms of storage, in terms of logistics, and so on. Uh, I think this must be overcome by people concerned. But basically, for us to have the ruling on halal, I think I've said enough. And then there are other things that I think that are of concern, especially on the other types of vaccine created by, say, for example, AstraZeneca. They use some gelatin, formaldehyde, and other components. These are also some issues. But I think until unless we get the right facts from the company, and I think the NPRA, the National Pharmaceutical Control Agency, recently they received the dossier from the from one of the companies, And I think they are now looking at the dossier together with the experts and so on to make sure that they have got things in place and to get it registered. And also they have, it seems that according to the Ministry of Health, they have appointed 5 experts to evaluate the data given to them. And then, of course, they have to also cater for the logistics in terms of the what do you call the material to be delivered. And then later on, they have to prioritize who are the people to be prioritized, because the vaccines are not enough for the whole country. So they have to prioritize. And then also they have to monitor whether protection is achieved or not by the taking of these medicines. So is my time up? Yeah, I think that is my part and trying to talk about the aspect of halal. Then, and I'm going to emphasize that this is based on our Malaysian MS24 document, whereby we have specified how the halal aspect of this material are to be seen. So I think with that, I'll sum up. I'll complete my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. Zari. I think you have shared with us on this. I think among your earliest points that this concordance principle that adopted by UK, I mean, it's a very important principle that will be based on. And I think you mentioned that it is not something new for these COVID-19 vaccines in terms of to determine the halal status, because you have already mentioned, and I think you also involved with this. Team developed the standard MS 2424 2019,
Yeah.
and also it was not only back to 2012,
Mm.
and you mentioned about because of the variety base of this vaccine for this COVID-19. So to determine the halal status, we need to go and investigate individually what the vaccines contains, and
Yes,
that would
correct.
be something that I think would be very good. I think perhaps we will keep questions for you later. We would like to move to the second speaker, Mr. Amrahi Buang. Given the limited supply of early batch of COVID-19 vaccines, what is your take on the ethical dilemma of prioritizing high-risk groups? That is the elderly and health workers as compared to those that are responsible to transmit the virus, such as children, as suggested by some research findings. And what are measures to ensure equitable distribution of the vaccine in society? Mr. Amrahi, please.
Thank you, Dr. Azam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa barik salim. Assalamualaikum. A very good morning to all, Dr. Zari and also Dr. Hafiz and participants. Can I have my slides, please? First slide. Okay. First of all, I actually just to share a few thoughts regarding the topic, because I will focus on the ethical issues in vaccine distribution. Yeah, I'm representing Malaysian Pharmacist Society. Okay, we have actually changed from Malaysian Pharmaceutical Society to Malaysian Pharmacist Society from 3rd December 2020. Okay, yeah, I think I would like to say thanks to the organizer for inviting me to share my thoughts. So if you look into, sorry, the second slide, please. Okay, if you look into the what you call the COVID virus, so COVID-19 means coronavirus disease in 2019, and is caused by what you call SARS coronavirus 2, which is actually a follow-up from the first virus. And this is something that I want to share so that at least we can have a better perspective. Next slide, please. All right, no, next slide, please. Yeah. So if we look into what is going on, in the whole world now, this is the statistic as of yesterday. So you can see that now it's involved for 77.2 million cases, and we have 1.7 million deaths, and so on and so forth, involved 216 countries. And Malaysia is actually at the 75th place. Yeah. So you can see that this is this a pandemic? Of course, this is a pandemic. It is a reality, all right, causing deaths and so on and so forth. So this actually caused all the anxiety all across the globe. Yeah. Next. So and we can see this online actually. If you look into from this website, okay, you can see that we can get all this status of the epidemic or the pandemic, okay, online. This is the beauty of the global world, so that we cannot hide away from information, and information is as when we want to have the information. Of course, every day we hear the what you call the latest on the pandemic situation in Malaysia, and as of yesterday, it goes back to more than 2,000. So this has been said since what you call 1 year ago. So as we know, that it started in 19 December in Wuhan last year. Yeah. So this is just a little bit of background. Next. So go back to the topic. So I'm actually going to focus on ethical issues, which is actually the crux of the question. Next. All right. As mentioned by the Dr. Prof. Zari just now, if you look into the various stages of vaccine development, from virus analysis, vaccine is developed, animal trials, human trials, and then approval, and also mass production. And if we look into the right side of the figure, so you can see that by right, in terms of number of years, it takes a lot of, we are talking about a lot of years, when you talk about the previous vaccine when it's actually under production. All right, so the question will be raised, how come now within 1 year we are actually able, to produce a vaccine if you compare from the previous experiences. I can only offer two things. Yeah. Number one, sometimes the length of the development is because of analysis, right? Other than, and now with the use of what you call artificial intelligence, as well as big data analysis, I'm sure we can really cut down the number of what you call the number of years. So I think kudos to the scientists and all over the world, as what mentioned by Prof. Zahri just now, that we are able to come out with something in November. Next. So you can see that the latest thing about this is that approval have been given. All right, we can see on the right side, the first woman that actually received the Pfizer jab. All right, this all upon approval by UK. After that, then I think 2 days back, we're talking about the what you call the Moderna's, being also approved. All these are under emergency use. So this is something that that we have to come into reality, that what is actually happening around the world. Next. And people will be asking about what is actually the situation in Malaysia. So the situation in Malaysia is the fact that most important thing is that all pharmaceutical product must be registered with the Drug Control Authority. Right? And this is something that that is been there since the 80s, middle of 80s. And I think kudos to our friend in the MPRA for make sure that wherever come into the country is of quality, safe to use, and also efficacious. So these are things that have a very big impact in terms of ethics, because we want, the drugs to be of quality, to be safe, and also efficacious. Next. All right. So as mentioned by Prof. Zadi just now, this is actually a commitment from the government. YB Khairi actually mentioned that, that whatever it is, the what you call the final say, okay, for all these vaccines all over the world, as mentioned by Prof. Zadi just now, will have to go to the same process, right? Meaning that it has to be registered, of course, with whatever SOP, what you call that we have in MPRA. And I want to share with you that that my colleagues in MPRA is really very, very strict. All right, it's not something that that they will compromise. That is something that I know about that. So the purpose of the when you talk about the government commitment is that, like what Prof. Zadi said just now, we must have at least have 70 access, to the population to have to achieve the herd immunity. So this is the main objective, so that we can actually control, the infection. Next. Next. Okay. Okay, now you can see that now people are also talking about going into halal vaccine, and this is one of the effort, and this is very interesting because we have a private company who's actually going to work with another party overseas and see whether we are able to do this. So I'm sure the authorities in Malaysia, be it JAKIM and also KKM, MOH, we will make sure that this is an effort. But I'm sure this will take time. I think Malaysia is a bit late in terms of to establish our own vaccine. So this is something that is an effort. So we'll see whether it will come into fruition in the future. Next. All right. And if you look into the being announced by the government, announced in the parliament, yeah. So we can see that everyone knows about the 3 billion what you call allocation for COVID. Yeah. So we have been informed that we are going to have from Pfizer, from COVAX, and also from AstraZeneca, and also some other this one. So what I'm trying to say is the fact that it comes from many sources, like what Prof. Zadi said just now. So now the issue will have some ethical impact, meaning that how do you actually distribute this vaccine to various parts of the population. Next. All right. So if you look into the ethics per se, all right, I think point number one, okay, we have to look into ourselves whether we want to make it mandatory or not. All right. So if you want to make it mandatory, then you have to have the law. All right. So of course, from the point of ethics, all right, and choice. So we are talking about the balance, okay, the benefit and the risk. Okay, we are talking about number one, the personal choice versus the greater public good. So this is something that that the authorities, okay, who is going to decide, to distribute the vaccine, have to go into this area. So this all this question are what you call a very, very relevant. For example, what is the balance between personal choice and protection of at-risk members in the population? Okay, is it appropriate, to legally mandate vaccination during, say now, we have a COVID-19 pandemic? Okay, is it legally? Do we want to mandate? Also, in some instances, for even now, is actually affecting entry to school and so on. Yeah. And then we also say whether, even though you have the law, should exemption to legally mandated vaccination be allowed for medical condition that make vaccination unadvisable. So, of course, every patient is a different individual. Every individual body will respond differently to anything that goes into the body. All right. So this include vaccines. Yeah. And then should exemption, okay, be or should exemption to legally mandated vaccination be allowed based on religious and personal belief? So these are also ethical issues that we have to cover. I'm sure the authorities will look into it because we have, especially in Malaysia, all right, we have multicultural, we have values, different culture, different belief, different religion, and so on. So ethically, how are we going to address all this in our population? Being, as you know, that we are all multi-religious, multiracial, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So this is something from the point of ethics, whether we want to put the law in place. So this is one aspect. Next. All right. If you look into the distribution, we are talking about equitable distribution of the vaccines. All right. So when we look from the point of ethics, so should regulation exist that ensure equal access to vaccine from all socio-economic, ethnic, and minority groups in a population? So this is very valid in Malaysia, where we have different socio-economic background, different ethnicity, and also we have minority group. For example, our orang asli, orang asal. So how are we going to ensure that they are part of this distribution of vaccines, and what type of vaccines, to be given to them? Because there's no one vaccines, we're going to get, from the market. So this is something that we need to ponder under equitable distribution of vaccine. Next. And also, when vaccines, as of now, are in short supply, who should decide which groups, should be protected, and who must be left vulnerable, to disease? So this is a very big ethical, issues where you have to answer this question, so that the authorities will have to look from this point of view. And this is something that what we want is that the government to be transparent in their program. I'm sure there will be a national vaccination program for COVID-19. So we want to know, the population want to know how are they going to implement this. Next. Next. All right. And then the next point is, how can vaccination be ensured for low-income children and those without health insurance? All right. Of course, we only heard that the government, say that they're going to give free vaccines, to the population. All right. But this will be done by the public, by the public sector. But I'm not too sure. We are talking about what, 32 millions, and then our foreign workers, 35 million. So how are we going to ensure that we have this equitable distribution of vaccine? And this is something that is an issue. We will affect, distribution. So I think this is something that we need to consider from the ethics viewpoint. Next. All right. And for something that that when you look into our situation in Malaysia, all right, we have situation in Peninsular Malaysia, we have situation in Sabah and Sarawak. All right, so this is something that what you call we have to look into. All right, people with low income, racial, and so ethnic minority adults. So I think when we talk about consideration, okay, this is one of the point, that we need to establish, so that we can have that 70% coverage of population to achieve the herd immunity. Yeah. Okay. Next. All right. Then how about this? How are we going to address the situation with respect to our foreign workers? I heard, probably they have to pay. So when we say they have to pay, is it they have to pay, or the what you call or the company is going to pay. All right, and but the most challenging will be the illegal immigrants. I'm sure the situation in Sabah teach us very useful lessons. Okay, and these are things that we have to look into, because as we speak now, the situation in Sabah, the situation in Selangor, and KL, and it's all involve foreign workers and I mentioned illegal immigrants. So this is something that need to be addressed. Next. All right. And then when you talk about when you talk about the from the ethics point, yeah, I'm going to expand what Prof. Zadi has mentioned, right? Because he has mentioned about concordance, right? And so this informed consent is very important when we talk about should informed consent relating to the benefits and the risk of vaccine be required prior to vaccination. So this is what the government have to have this information when they embark on the program. All right. So we have to, because we need to educate the public, right, to make sure that we because there will be benefits, there will be risks. So we need to know the balance between the benefit and risk of the vaccine. And from maybe Prof. Zadi can correct me, but from what we have the information now, during the clinical trials, okay, a lot of the population are not involved. All right, so maybe Prof. Zadi can expand on that, because these are the things when you look into the data, when you choose which part or which segment of the population, then we have to look into the data, because I don't think the clinical the clinical studies for all this vaccine doesn't involve Malaysians. So we don't have an idea what is going to happen to our population, because we don't actually involve in the phase 3 clinical trials. So this is something that in terms of ethics we have to look into it. Yeah. And then the next point is who should be involved in providing consent prior to vaccination. So as you know now, of course, if the adult is not a problem, but if you talk about parents, geriatrics, all right, or even guardians and over children, or even to give the vaccine to this population, then who is again to give consent, right? And I want to add another point, when you talk about giving informed consent, all right, we have to add this additional point that we have to tell them regarding the halal status, because we have different types of vaccine coming in. All right, so based on whatever knowledge that we have about the vaccines, okay, then we can, like what Prof. Zadi has mentioned, we should be able to know, because at the moment we don't have any halal certified what you call vaccine at the moment. Yeah, of course, when you talk about consent, to me it can be a written consent or even a verbal consent. All right, so this is something that can be done. Mind you, we are talking about mass vaccination. Mass vaccination is not like they're under the NIP. Our NIP is only to small population. This is very massive. So this is something that we need to look into. Next slide, please. All right. I think this I have to say this as my final point, because I think most important thing is that MPS, the Malaysian Pharmacist Society, okay, with the input from our International Federation of Pharmacists, FIP, you see FIP have made a commitment to the global population, meaning that action on improving vaccination coverage. Yeah. So we felt that we have to inform the government that pharmacists, whether we are in the government sector, in the public sector, or in the private sector, we are ready, to help the government, in terms of advocacy, activities. All right, we can even involve in pharmacovigilance, because we are talking about reporting of AEFI, adverse effect following immunization. And also where we have trained and competent pharmacists, that they must be allowed, to vaccinate the population. So we have informed the government, this can be done, and we hope that we have a positive response from the government. Yeah. So I think this is about all that I want to share regarding the question that was raised to me in terms of the ethics. So over back to you, Dr. Azam. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Amri. You have covered all the ethical issues, I think, from the big questions, from the small to the big questions pertaining to this vaccination. I mean, from the perspective of halal as well as for the people to receive these vaccines. And I think towards the end of your presentation, you mentioned about this I think about these, if I can say, problems that might occur with regard uh, to people to have these vaccines. Among, of course, the 3 billion allocation by the government, with I mean priority given to the certain groups, and the most vulnerable group would be the foreigners, especially the workers, the foreign workers. And you have mentioned one of the things with regard to, if I can say, from the human rights perspective, how these illegal immigrants can get this vaccine. And that would be things I think we can throw question after this. Thank you very much, Mr. Amri, for
Thank you.
this very fascinating
Thank you.
presentations from
Thank you.
the ethical perspective.
Thank you.
Okay, now we move to the speaker, third speaker, Dr. Hafiz Muhyiddin. Okay, Dr. Hafiz, you can answer in Malay, but I will read the questions in English. What is the religious perspective on vaccination, especially in the context of COVID-19 pandemics and the importance of halal vaccine for Muslims? Okay, Dr. Hafiz, faham tak? Boleh?
Okay, faham. Yes, understand. Okay, baik. Thank you to Associate Prof. Dr. Azam. And Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning and good afternoon. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma aftah alaina hikmataka wa anshur alaina min khaza'ini rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. First of all, it is an honor for me to be with this two great guru in this virtual forum to bring and provide talk on the halal COVID-19 vaccine issues. As we all know, based on report in various news sources, the issue of the COVID-19 vaccine had invited a wide range of views among the general public. And we have found that there are those who welcome the government intention to bring the supply of COVID-19 vaccine. But on the other hand, of course, there are those who reject it, of course. However, due to the ruling fatwa on particular vaccine, which we are dealing with, I think a valid explanation of the vaccine need to be represented accurately. And also, I would like to notice that the vaccines of COVID-19 fatwa has not yet been officially announced to the public. However, it was decided on 3rd December from MKI Jakim, and now is being discussed by the state level fatwa committee. Okay, the public, from my perspective, what I see is the public always considered the issuance of fatwa is a easy job or easy work. Instead, it is a heavy task actually to the fatwa committee, because what? Because there are many things to be considered. Okay, perhaps here today, there are a lot of things I would like to share with audience, with viewers, but regarding to the constraints of time, I would try to make it short. And now, Dr. Azam, please allow me to continue this session in Bahasa Malaysia until the end.
Okay, please.
Okay, baik.
Please proceed.
Okay, let me share my slide. Okay, could me? Okay. Okay. Wait for a moment. Okay, clear, Dr. Azam. Is it already shared? Okay, baik. Okay, introduction, pendahuluan. Dalam konteks kita membicarakan tentang vaksin ini, saya ingin menyatakan bahawa kita berbincang tentang isu hukum vaksin, fatwa vaksin ini, dia berada di dalam konteks yang tertentu, yang kadang-kadang mungkin dilihat oleh setengah orang, kedudukan vaksin ini sama seperti condition kita membincangkan tentang pengambilan makanan. Maknanya dalam konteks makanan, so everybody has its right to choose what kind of food that he need or to consume. Sedangkan dalam konteks hukum vaksin ini, kita membicarakan berkaitan dengan healthcare, tentang medicine matter, yang mana pertimbangan yang diambil di sini bukan dalam konteks pilihan dalam keadaan biasa, tetapi lebih pada keadaan yang membicarakan tentang keadaan-keadaan darurat, yang mana dia mempunyai, kita kata, kedudukan yang perbincangan yang berbeza ataupun yang tersendiri di dalam hukum syarak. Jadi kalau katalah kita kembali kepada maqasid syariah, para ulama menyatakan bahawa the aims of syariah ini, it come to protect maslahah manusia, interest of human di dunia dan akhirat. Ada 5 perkara yang mana sangat-sangat ditekankan oleh syariat Islam, iaitu agama, nyawa, akal, keturunan dan juga harta, yang disebut sebagai daruriyatil khams. Jadi penjagaan ataupun pemeliharaan mana-mana aspek maqasid ini adalah satu benda yang tidak boleh ditolak ansur ataupun bukan, especially yang berkaitan dengan the protection of human life, the care of human life. Jadi ia adalah satu perkara yang sangat-sangat ditekankan oleh syarak. Jadi penyakit, of course kita katakan Covid-19 disease ini adalah merupakan wabak, pandemik, benda yang berbahaya yang boleh mendatangkan kesakitan ataupun penyakit kepada manusia. Jadi penyakit adalah merupakan, kita kata, satu faktor yang boleh mendatangkan kemudaratan terhadap nyawa manusia. Kalau katalah kita perhatikan di dalam ayat Al-Quran, di dalam hadis-hadis Rasulullah SAW, kita akan mendapati bahawa secara rumusan dalam konteks pemeliharaan nyawa manusia ini, seperti yang dirumuskan dalam ayat-ayat Al-Quran yang boleh saya bacakan beberapa ayat saja, banyak sebenarnya, seperti firman Allah yang berbunyi wala taqtulun nafsal lati haramallahu illa bil haqq, di dalam surah Al-An'am ayat 151, yang mana Allah Subhanahu wa taala melarang kita membunuh nyawa yang tidak berdosa. Jadi para ulama menyatakan bahawa termasuk di sini nyawa orang yang sakit, orang gila, ataupun of course kalau kita katalah orang kurang upaya. Sebab kita melihat yang mereka ini adalah merupakan liability kepada society. Tetapi di sisi syarak, okey, mereka mempunyai dari segi kepentingan nyawa mereka itu mereka mempunyai, kita kata, same level need to be protected seperti mana nyawa orang sihat. Malah nyawa, kita kata, seorang Perdana Menteri dan juga termasuk raja, segala raja di atas muka bumi ini pun sama dengan orang OKU yang tidak boleh begitu mudah untuk kita remove mereka itu daripada kehidupan. Itulah juga dalam hadis Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, baginda menyebut dalam sebuah hadis, qadarul mu'min indallah subhanahu wa ta'ala a'zam min zawalil Ka'bah. Nyawa, nilai seseorang mukmin itu, ya, pendengar semua, Dr. Azam dan Prof Zari serta Tuan Amrahi Buang, besar di sisi Allah Subhanahu wa taala itu daripada hilang Kaabah. Maknanya kalau diletakkan secara perbandingan antara membunuh orang OKU sebagai contoh, orang sakit ini yang kita kata mungkin liability, dengan meruntuhkan Kaabah, jadi para ulama mengatakan bahawa we have to protect, kita kata, the life of human, berbanding dengan membiarkan Kaabah itu diruntuhkan. Jadi di sini perbandingan, bukan kata hukum meruntuhkan Kaabah itu boleh, tapi Rasulullah SAW memberikan, kita kata, satu give an example for comparison. Pentingnya kita menjaga nyawa manusia. Jadi dalam konteks untuk penjagaan nyawa manusia ini, kalau kata dilihat di sini, saya dapat merumuskan beberapa kaedah, kaedah-kaedah umum daripada kaedah fiqh, kaedah usul fiqh yang para ulama rumuskan sebagai satu rules apabila kita berhadapan dengan isu fatwa dalam konteks hari ini dalam Covid-19 vaksin isu. So ini dia punya guideline-guideline yang digunakan, antaranya kaedah ad-darar yuzal, kemudaratan itu perlu dihapuskan. Apa hukum menghapuskan kemudaratan? Adalah wajib. Membiarkan kemudaratan itu wujud berleluasa dalam kalangan manusia adalah haram. Dan juga tanggungjawab ini, tanggungjawab di peringkat layman, di peringkat semua orang. Malah tanggungjawab ini menjadi lebih berat apabila dia dipikul dan ditaklifkan kepada kerajaan. Darul mafasid aula min jalbil masalih. Menolak mafsadah, keburukan itu lebih diutamakan daripada kita menarik maslahah. So dalam konteks 50-50 ataupun kita kata hak baik dengan hak buruk, kita nak ambil hak mana? Jadi para ulama merumuskan kaedah ini bahawa kita kena utamakan untuk elak benda-benda yang berbahaya. Baik yukhtar ahwanus syarrain, memilih dua keburukan. Dalam konteks kadang-kadang kita terpaksa berhadapan macam isu vaksin yang selalu dibangkitkan, yang vaksin ini mempunyai side effect, apa itu yang dinamakan sebagai AAV, kan? Compare dengan fungsi vaksin yang terberkesan, yang berkesan sebelum ini di dalam, kita kata, untuk mengekang penyakit-penyakit berbahaya seperti batuk kokor, tetanus, difteria, cacar yang sebelum ini. Walaupun ada kesan-kesan sampingannya, tetapi kalau dilihat secara komprehensif, maknanya dia dapat menyelamatkan ribuan jutaan nyawa dan juga dapat menghentikan penularan wabak itu secara efektif. Kemudian ad-darurat tubihul mahzurat. Saat-saat kritikal, dalam saat-saat emergency cases, syarak memberikan kemudahan, kelonggaran, rukhsah untuk menggunakan mahzurat. Mahzurat ini termasuk benda-benda yang dilarang, yang dihukumkan haram oleh syarak. Jadi I think Prof Zari dia terlibat, kita kata, di dalam untuk mengkaji, melihat konten di dalam vaksin ini. Jadi mereka tahu macam mana untuk membawa, kita kata, data-data yang berkaitan dengan konten vaksin ini untuk dibentangkan di dalam muzakarah fatwa kebangsaan, Majlis Kebangsaan Malaysia. Jadi kita bincangkan itu dalam konteks darurah, bukan kita bincangkan dalam konteks banyak pilihan-pilihan halal lain yang boleh digunakan. Dan ada kaedah menyebut al-amal bil maslahah in kana rajihatan. Kita kena ambil sesuatu yang baik sekiranya dia rajih. Tajannubul mafsadah in kana rajihatan, menolak keburukan sekiranya rajih. Dua kaedah ini untuk makluman kita semua. Para ulama membincangkan bahawa dalam kita menetapkan suatu keputusan ijtihad, maksud ijtihad di sini ialah macam isu Covid-19 vaksin, yang mana hukum itu tidak ada pada zaman Rasulullah. Dia adalah contemporary issue yang perlu kepada ruling fatwa. Jadi dalam membuat keputusan, of course dia ada, kita kata tidak ada satu kebaikan yang solid, yang mutlak. Pasti ada, kita kata pro and cons-nya. Jadi jika dilihat kepada yang mana yang lebih dominan, maka keputusan itulah yang akan digunakan dalam membuat sesuatu fatwa. Kalau kata kita tengok lagi, banyak sebenarnya kaedah-kaedah yang dirumuskan oleh ulama. Tapi apa yang saya nak nyatakan di sini, apabila hukum yang berkaitan dengan vaksin itu dikawal ataupun dibincangkan bukan di peringkat individu. So the issue of fatwa is not one man made or one man show. It comes from collective work that combine syariah and medicine expert, yang mana di situ melibatkan, kita kata, peranan dan juga fungsi kerajaan. Jadi di sini walaupun orang awam mereka mempunyai pandangan mereka sendiri, keputusan mereka sendiri sama ada untuk menerima ataupun menolak vaksin. Jadi para ulama mengatakan, so at the end, okay, dalam membuat satu keputusan kena ada satu dasar, maknanya ada satu kata putus. Jadi kata putus yang paling berautoriti untuk mengajak semua orang supaya patuh kepada keputusan itu adalah di authority, government. Jadi ada di sana kaedah tasarruful imam ala ra'iyah manutun bil maslahah. Tindakan imam pada rakyat itu tertakluk kepada maslahah. Amrul hakim yarfa'ul khilaf. Apabila satu dasar was issued by government, so maknanya yarfa'ul khilaf, pandangan, perbezaan pandangan, dalil-dalil hatta di kalangan para ulama, para asatizah kita yang berada di bawah itu tidak boleh diambil kira lagi. So everybody, everyone, every person must follow the order that issued by the government. Baik, lil imam taqidu ba'd al hurriyat fi hudud tasarrufatihi hifdhan lil maslahatil ammah. Okey, kaedah ini pemerintah, imam, maknanya dia mempunyai, dapat, boleh untuk nak melimitkan akses kebebasan-kebebasan rakyat dalam keputusannya untuk menjaga masalah ammah. Okey, of course, ya akan ada, kita kata, kelompok yang tidak mau vaksin kerana mungkin mereka mempunyai pandangan rawatan alternatif ataupun dia punya kaedah-kaedah yang base kepada pengalaman dia, wallahu a'lam. Tetapi dalam menjaga, kita kata, masalah ammah, okay, public interest ini, maka kerajaan ataupun mana-mana pihak berkuasa dia kena menjaga kepentingan yang mungkin sebab apa? Sebab rawatan ini perlukan kos, sama ada kita nak menggunakan rawatan alternatif, rawatan additional. So kita kata in term of that, all of this treatment or of this alternative treatment, kita kata memerlukan, kita kata, perbelanjaan yang besar. Jadi bukan semua orang mampu, bukan semua orang mampu. Jadi di sini apabila kita melihat yang pihak kerajaan akan supply, kita kata, vaksin itu yang akan diberikan, diagihkan secara percuma, yang mana majoriti orang yang tidak berkemampuan itu boleh dapat. Baik, kemudian seterusnya, okey, hukum rawatan penyakit. Okey, saya nak nyatakan di sini bahawa kadang-kadang orang keliru. Orang keliru antara kerana terdapat perbezaan pandangan ulama dalam menyentuh tentang apakah hukum mendapatkan rawatan. Para ulama cuba synchronize hukum-hukum yang berbeza ini. Mereka menyatakan bahawa hukum mendapatkan rawatan kesihatan ini, okey, basically ia adalah harus. Harus. Walau bagaimanapun, hukum itu dia fleksibel. Dia boleh berubah mengikut situasi risiko mudarat yang dihadapi oleh pesakit. So apabila, kalau kita tengok keadaan yang kita hadapi pada hari ini, mungkin setengah orang tu dia melihat kematian disebabkan, kita kata, efek Covid-19 ini hanya beberapa ratus dan dinisbahkan kepada jumlah pesakit yang terinfek dengan lebih kurang dalam 99,000 lebih lah. Dan juga yang mati itu sikit, mereka mengatakan bahawa kematiannya itu masih beberapa persen. So kita harus, seperti saya katakan, bahawa situasi yang kita hadapi sekarang ini, penilaian pada tahap darurah, pada tahap penilaian itu bukannya mai daripada diri kita, tetapi diserahkan kepada kementerian pakar-pakar di Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia dan juga Majlis Keselamatan Malaysia. Data-data yang kita perolehi daripada agensi-agensi kerajaan yang lebih sah ini sebenarnya lebih tepat, lebih kuat untuk menyatakan, kita kata, hakikat sebenar. Jadi dengan kita melihat bahawa jumlah yang terinfected dengan Covid-19 ni berjuta seluruh dunia ni, kita katakan bahawa ini adalah mudarat. Ini adalah satu, kita kata, ancaman kepada pesakit. Maka pada ketika ini, secara teknikalnya, para ulama mengatakan bahawa hukum mendapatkan rawatan sekiranya diarahkan oleh kerajaan, hukumnya adalah wajib. Malah Imam Masruq bin Al-Ajda' Al-Hamdani, seperti yang dinukilkan di dalam kitab Al-Mabsut oleh As-Sarakhsi, iaitu seorang imam mujtahid di dalam mazhab Hanafi, Masruq menyatakan bahawa sekiranya seseorang itu mati kerana apa? Kerana enggan mengambil benda yang haram ketika darurat sebagai satu-satunya kaedah cara rawatan untuk menyelamatkan nyawa dia. Jadi pada ketika itu dia mati. Maka apa hukum kematian dia? Maka Imam Masruq kata orang itu adalah berdosa. Berdosa kerana pada perkiraannya dia tak mau makan benda haram, tapi di sisi syarak menyelamatkan nyawa itu lebih besar daripada makan benda haram. Jadi dia berdosa in term of their life, dia punya kehidupannya itu mati. Jadi pandangan ini dipersetujui oleh semua ulama-ulama, termasuk ulama mazhab Syafi'i kita. Imam As-Sayuti sendiri menyebut di dalam Ashbah wan Nazair bahawa hukum rukhsah kita boleh pilih nak guna tak guna ini pada ketika darurat hukumnya adalah wajib. Baik. Kemudian seterusnya dari segi hukum pencegahan penyakit. I think benda ni clear. Saya nak pergi ke poin seterusnya. Okey, ini untuk yang saya nyatakan, iaitu syariah prinsipal in healthcare. Dalam prinsip-prinsip syariah yang mana para ulama tetapkan apa yang perlu dipatuhi di dalam kita membuat satu keputusan, satu fatwa berhubung dengan penggunaan sumber-sumber yang haram. Saya nyatakan di sini bahawa isu kaedah ini, prinsip ini bukannya applicable untuk kes vaksin Covid-19 ini saja, tetapi dia applicable di dalam apa saja jenis-jenis rawatan. Yang pertamanya, okey, syariat Islam ataupun hukum syarak ya menuntut kita, mewajibkan kita untuk jaga kebersihan anggota, pakaian, persekitaran daripada benda-benda najis dan kotoran. Jadi sebab itu kita nampak secara asasnya babi, darah, bangkai, arak, apa saja yang mengandungi virus, bakteria, toksik, berbahaya. Ya, sebab dia ada bakteria yang baik, tetapi bakteria ataupun virus yang berbahaya, quote and quote. Jadi hak ni haram diguna, tak boleh guna. Allah Subhanahu wa taala sebut, ya ayyuhallazina amanu kulu min thayyibati ma razaqnakum washkuru lillahi in kuntum iyyahu ta'budun. And the second principle, okay, penggunaan ubat-ubatan yang halal dan suci sahaja yang perlu diutamakan apabila kita nak mengambil sebarang rawatan, termasuk kita kata pemilihan vaksin daripada manufacturer yang banyak ya, Prof Zari. Maknanya banyak sebenarnya, bukan kata Pfizer, BioNTech, AstraZeneca, tapi kita di Malaysia maknanya kita decide untuk mengambil daripada Pfizer dengan AstraZeneca yang terkini. Baik, jadi penggunaan ubat-ubat yang halal dan suci itu adalah wajib. Ini adalah prinsip asas yang mana tidak boleh diubah. Sebab apa saya nak betulkan di sini sedikit, kita kata pemikiran yang salah di kalangan kawan-kawan kita yang anti vaksin ataupun menolak vaksin ini, apabila mereka mengatakan bahawa vaksin, setengah-setengah vaksin termasuk yang dahulu tahun 80-an dulu yang mengandungi unsur biologi daripada khinzir, daripada sumber-sumber haram ni, mereka mengatakan bahawa keputusan fatwa ini seolah-olah berani untuk mengubah benda haram tu menjadi halal. Sebenarnya bukan. Fatwa bukan mengubah benda yang haram jadi halal ataupun mengubah yang halal menjadi haram, bukan. Jadi fatwa itu seperti yang saya katakan tadi, dia mengambil banyak aspek, dan yang menghalalkan benda yang haram ini adalah bukan ulama. Tetapi kalau kata kita melihat dalam prinsip yang ketiga, iaitu kelonggaran menggunakan sumber haram dalam rawatan dibenarkan berlaku di dalam kes darurah yang boleh menyebabkan kematian, yang boleh menyebabkan keadaan kronik. Apabila we are in limited access to the halal sources, ataupun kita kata kesukaran untuk nak mendapatkan sumber-sumber haram, malah di sini saya cuba nak elak ya Prof Azam, daripada takut sekali lagi berlaku kontroversi dalam kita kata majma' fiqh Islami. Mereka membincangkan para ulama, antaranya almarhum Syekh Dr. Wahbah Az-Zuhaili dengan beberapa orang sarjana Islam kontemporari. Mereka membincangkan antara ubat halal haram, yang mana yang halal itu adalah fast effective, maknanya kesan dapat merawat penyakit itu cepat, compare dengan alternatif halal, tetapi keberkesanannya itu kadang-kadang based on testimonial, bukan kita kata ujian klinikal, ataupun it take too long time kita kata untuk nak orang kata apa, recover penyakit itu. Jadi dalam kes penyakit biasa tak apa, tapi dalam penyakit kritikal yang mana tertakluk kepada pandangan pakar, nasihat pakar perubatan, sekiranya berlaku lambat di situ, kesannya boleh membawa kepada nyawa, maka Prof Wahbah Az-Zuhaili mengatakan bahawa sumber ubat yang mengandungi sumber haram itu pada ketika darurat, ya, pada ketika darurat, bukan pada ketika biasa. Pada ketika darurat, walaupun ada ubat-ubat halal, seperti kita katalah macam adanya rawatan alternatif, rawatan ubat-ubat daripada herba tradisional, termasuk juga ialah mungkin ruqyah, bacaan kita kata ayat-ayat Al-Quran apa semua. Tetapi mungkin vaksin yang ada itu, saya juga membaca bahawa vaksin yang dihasilkan oleh Pfizer dan juga BioNTech itu keberkesanannya itu melebihi 95%. Ialah itu dari segi keupayaan usaha manusia, dan kita jangan anggap benda ni melawan takdir Tuhan sebenarnya. Kerana Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala juga suruh kita berusaha. Jadi berdasarkan kepada ujian klinikal ini, maka dipercayai. Tak perlu kita yakin 100%, tetapi cukup dengan kita zon ghalib, kata para ulama, dia dapat menyelamatkan nyawa, maka pada ketika itu boleh kita guna. Itu jika sumber itu mengandungi bahan-bahan yang haram. Tapi seperti mana yang disebut oleh Prof Zari tadi, bahawa bahan-bahan yang menjadi konten di dalam vaksin COVID-19 ini, of course daripada bahan-bahan yang selamat, free, langsung daripada unsur-unsur biologi haiwan, khinzir, base kepada benda-benda saintifik. Jadi pada pandangan saya,
Dr. Hafiz, kalau boleh boleh dalam 2-3 minit.
Okey, nak habis dah. Okey, baik. So itu 3 prinsip ya, yang mana digariskan oleh kita kata para ulama kita. Berdasarkan di sini ada beberapa syarat yang kalau katalah kita rumuskan daripada situ, makanya hukum keharusan kita kata halal vaksin, seperti yang saya sebutkan tadi, maknanya telah ada resolusi daripada Majlis Kebangsaan MKI pada 3 Disember lalu. Cumanya belum lagi dirilis secara official. Okay, so kesimpulannya, okay, there are a few points that could I summarize here. Number 1, prevention of the COVID-19 pandemic that undertaken by the authorities is in line with Sharia objective in the care of human life. And number 2, there is a collective cooperation between physician and Sharia expert in determining the usability of any vaccine. Number 3, the decision of the national fatwa of course complies with the preventive method proposed by Hukum Syara or Islamic law. And the last point, number 4, the public shouldn't have any doubt about immunization or vaccination program in Malaysia, including the necessity of the COVID-19 vaccine. So, I think hopefully that what we conveyed just now give a good understand to all. And I pass back to Dr. Azam. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Terima kasih Dr. Hafiz. So sorry lah to interrupt because kita ada banyak soalan yang telah di forward kepada kita ni, dan soalan-soalan tu mungkin memakan masa. Jadi saya ucapkan terima kasih kepada Dr. Hafiz yang telah membincangkan dari perspektif hukum, dan Dr. Hafiz ni untuk pengetahuan semua adalah ahli jawatankuasa fatwa bagi negeri Kedah dan juga Pulau Pinang. Jadi seorang yang memang pakar fatwa lah. Jadi dalam hal ini kita telah mengenal pasti bahawa mengikut pandangan Dr. Hafiz, dia bukan bercakap atas nama platform jawatankuasa fatwa Kedah ataupun Pulau Pinang ni atas faktor sebagai seorang bagi cendekiawan bahawa keharusan menggunakan vaksin ini adalah bertukar kepada wajib sekiranya membawa pada mudarat, dan beliau telah mengemukakan banyak hujah daripada nas sama ada daripada Quran ataupun daripada hadis, dan juga sangat kawaid fikih ataupun the legal maxim yang dikongsi tadi yang agak banyak itu banyak membawa pada pendekatan keharusan dan juga kewajipan dalam keadaan tertentu untuk penggunaan vaksin. Terima kasih. Thank you very much Dr. Hafiz. Okay, we now move to Q&A. There are several questions here which I would like to throw. There is a question from Dr. Abdul Rahman and it addressed to everyone. Can the panel explain on concern on efficacy of vaccine on Malaysian on Malaysian, since there is no Malaysian involved in clinical trial, as the MPRA guideline for registration of fast-track pharmaceutical product during emergency required clinical trial phase 3 within Malaysian or ethnicity bridging report support. Please comment on this. Maybe we can start with Prof. Zari, followed by Mr. Amrahi and Dr. Hafiz, if you want to respond. Prof. Zari, please.
Thank you very much. That's very good question, and I think it concerns all of us. I understand that from my colleagues in Indonesia, they are having so-called tests on, because they're taking the Chinese vaccine, and they're having tests on their population before they commit to full-scale sort of vaccination. So I think that is the right procedure for us to follow, and I think I think that concern is valid, and is to make sure that it is good, it's efficacious for the Malaysian public. So I think we should try to follow that sort of ruling. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Amrahi, do you want to respond?
As I mentioned earlier, okay, we are talking about some a proper SOP, by MPRA, right? And when they make decision, you see, as I mentioned earlier, okay, this has been done by other regulatory bodies, and this is not new, It is something not new, So it's only how fast they actually can put the vaccine for the Malaysian population, right? Based on previous experiences, So I think I have faith in my colleagues at MPRA and also DCA to make that decision, because a decision has to be made based on actual facts, right? And this thing is changing, this virus is novel, all right? And as we can see, even as we speak, there is a new strain from UK. Right? So even you have trial and previous trials on, we have to face this. But I think what I would say, in a nutshell, is the fact that whatever decision that has been made, we have to base on facts, scientific facts, meaning that You cannot compromise on the quality. You cannot compromise on the safety, because the basic principle in medical practice is do no harm. Okay, that is very important. That principle is very important. And at the same time, also it has to be efficacious. All right. So, and efficacious, as what Prof. Zadi says, it can be between 50% and above, based on previous vaccines. So I think if the data shows that they have the efficacy at more than 90%, should be okay. And I'm sure my colleagues in MPRA be able to support this. So that's my response.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, there is second question from Mr. Abdul Rahman. What is your comment? The need of no fault compensation for vaccine needed in rollout of COVID-19 in Malaysia? Perhaps to both or those who would like to respond, Prof. Zari and Mr. Amrahi.
Well, these are the very sensitive issues that are always being raised. And that is the reason why we look into the complete specification data for the various formulation, for the various ingredients. And alhamdulillah, we are not alone in the look into the search for non-pork or non-animal based materials or ingredients. So our colleagues from Pakistan, from India, from the Arab countries, from Turkey and so on, they have been also doing the same. And I think they managed to overcome all these things. And I think the scientists overall, they also would like to make sure that they can fulfill all the requirement that is required of the Muslims. I think the what you call the vaccine from China, they even have issued so-called Halal certificate, showing that they are not doing things which will what you call contain things that are not to the pleasure of the Muslims. So I think this is a very important statement, important assessment, because nobody wants to have a vaccine later on that the public doesn't want to use. And I think this happens during the what I call the meningitis vaccine, which was produced by many countries, made for the Jamaah Haji. And there was a strong statement from the Indonesian government, and ultimately they managed to get the what we call the manufacturers to produce vaccines for meningitis that is in compliance with the halal aspect. I think that's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Amrahi, you want to respond?
Yeah, I think, okay, we take the Pfizer vaccine as an example, okay? So as we know that it has been used in UK at the moment. So there is, when you start something like this, the authority actually do the pharmacovigilance, okay, to every, who actually received the vaccine. So if Malaysia is going to get, say, 4 months down the line, or 3 or 4 months down the line, we will be able to get that information. All right, and I'm sure our authorities will respond to that. All right, and I'm sure the company also will have to respond if indeed they have really adverse event and so on. So I think this is to me in terms of what you call managing drugs is nothing new when you talk about side effect and so on. It's expected. As I mentioned earlier, every individual has a different response to anything that goes inside our body, including water. All right, including water. So if you, for example, say if you're a dialysis patient, you cannot consume water. It's like that. So the risk is very different. So I think we have to go back to when we talk about this, the pharmacovigilance is very important. At the same time, the response have to be. So that's why I say all this under the national program for COVID-19 vaccination, the government must be what I call transparent. And I say all healthcare professional in this country want to help the population. All right, be doctors, be pharmacists, be nurses, any of the HCP will be able to help. So we are opening, because I think this is the effort of the population, So I don't think it's only for MOH alone and so on and so forth. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you Mr. Amrahi. Okay, Dr. Hafiz, ada satu soalan ni. Oleh kerana fatwa ni bidang kuasanya adalah terletak pada negeri-negeri, dan apabila Majlis Muzakarah Kebangsaan berbincang tentang status halal ataupun boleh ataupun tidak penggunaan vaksin, terutama sekali dalam vaksin Covid-19 yang akan dikenakan pada tahun hadapan ini. Jadi di negeri-negeri dia ada tak kes sebelum ini ada negeri-negeri yang tidak bersetuju bahawa maknanya pemakaian vaksin ini hukumnya haram kerana sumbernya berdasar daripada sumber yang haram, dan apakah implikasinya terhadap kelainan fatwa yang dikeluarkan oleh negeri berkenaan terhadap keputusan di peringkat muzakarah. Mungkin Dr. Hafiz boleh respon.
Terima kasih pada soalan tersebut. Jadi untuk makluman semua bahawa keputusan Majlis Fatwa Kebangsaan ini dia lebih bertindak sebagai penyelaras kepada keputusan fatwa yang mana akan dimaklumkan, akan dipas kepada komiti fatwa di setiap negeri. Jadi apabila keputusan itu kertas resolusi dibawa ke peringkat negeri, contohnya seperti macam keputusan tadi, keputusan vaksin tadi telah dibincangkan di dalam Jawatan Kuasa Fatwa Negeri Kedah pada hari Ahad 11 berapa hari bulan 13 hari bulan lalu. Jadi secara kita kata praktisnya keputusan fatwa sebenarnya setiap negeri ini dia berautoriti di bawah bidang kuasanya untuk memutuskan fatwa yang berbeza daripada kebangsaan. Tetapi bukan dalam semua isu. Manakala isu-isu di peringkat nasional. Jadi semua jawatan kuasa fatwa ataupun jabatan mufti negeri-negeri termasuk wilayah di seluruh Malaysia ni akan cuba untuk mewujudkan keseragaman fatwa yang melibatkan kepentingan nasional, bukan kepentingan negeri. Walaupun mungkin fatwa itu digazet, tetapi akan adalah sedikit penambahbaikan pada sirah resolusi fatwa daripada kebangsaan itu untuk memperjelaskan lagi. Ya, sebab apa? Sebab biasanya kita kena faham bahawa satu sirah tu bila kata dia keluar dalam bentuk yang ringkas. Kerana perbincangan hukumnya itu telah diselesaikan di peringkat muzakarah. Jadi yang keluarnya itu kita tak perlu bincang balik. Jadi yang terlibat di dalam kita kata hukum vaksin ini, kalau tak salah saya, salah seorang pakar kita kata daripada physiciannya itu, salah seorangnya Prof. Zari kita. Jadi dialah yang memberikan pandangan, kita bergantung kepada kepakaran dia. Jadi bila kata mai di peringkat negeri, kita tak kaji balik dah, kita akan guna keputusan itu dengan disesuaikan di peringkat negeri. Jadi pada sepanjang penglibatan saya dan as I know lah, kalau kata silap wallahu alam, dalam kes-kes yang melibatkan vaksin ini belum ada negeri-negeri yang memberi keputusan yang berbeza. Sama ada keputusan peringkat negeri itu dia gazetkan di peringkat negeri ataupun dia tak gazet. Bila kata tak gazet, maknanya resolusi yang dibawa daripada Majlis Fatwa Kebangsaan itu diterima walaupun tidak digazet. Jadi begitu. Tapi tidak ada lagi kita kata keputusan daripada fatwa negeri yang tiba-tiba mengeluarkan kata ianya adalah haram, contrary dengan apa yang dikeluarkan di peringkat kebangsaan. Kalau ada pun maknanya akan ada sedikit tambahan-tambahan bawabit tertentu untuk memperkukuhkan fatwa di peringkat negeri. Sekian Dr. Azam.
Terima kasih.
Boleh saya tambah sikit Dr. Azam?
Yes, please.
Okay. So kalau kata kita tengok dari segi aplikasi berkaitan dengan fatwa dalam klinikal, dalam situasi klinikal kan. Jadi ikut pengalaman saya di Pusat Perubatan Mesti Melaya Jadi kita sebenarnya menghadapi dengan berbagai jenis ubat-ubatan dari berbagai sumber dan sebagainya So sebagai farmasi kita ada maklumat berkenaan dengan status and so on. Lepas tu kami juga mengeluarkan garis panduan untuk doktor-doktor, alright, melakukan sesuatu untuk memberikan kepada pesakit, ya. Tapi saya nak cuma jelaskan ada juga contoh di mana walaupun fatwa itu, ya, kita kata haram kan, tapi dalam klinikal kan dia jadi lain tau. Maknanya kita kena pakai suti mata yang Dr. Hafiz beritahu, panduan-panduan yang kita boleh gunakan untuk non halal medicine. So that maknanya garis panduan ni di bawah KKM pun dah wujud. So saya rasa doktor-doktor, nurses-nurses, pharmacist rujuk balik kepada dokumen itu dan sebar luaskan. Tidak, maknanya dia betul-betul berpandukan kepada syariah, dan aplikasi dia memang dibuat secara klinikal, because yang akan buat keputusan untuk diagnose, yang akan buat keputusan untuk menyatakan rawatan adalah kepada doktor.
Okay.
Keputusan itu. So jadi saya rasa aplikasi ni yang saya nak share lah, bahawa walaupun dia ada fatwa, tapi dalam klinikal situasi dia ada juga dia punya garis panduan yang patut itu ikut dan dia selari dengan kehendak syariah.
Okay, terima kasih Tuan Amrahi. Okay, I would like to request speakers. We need to extend it because the discussion is quite interesting and there are quite a few more questions. I think it would be not justice to take the question. So I seek the permission to extend more time for taking these questions. Okay, there's a question from Muhammad Al-Amin Muhammad. As far as we are concerned, Pfizer could only cover up to certain percentage population in Malaysia. How about other vaccines which is not certified as halal status, which can be used for others? Okay, perhaps if all the panel would like to respond.
Yeah, probably I'll begin.
Okay.
Basically, every vaccine that have to be used, that is used in Malaysia, have to be registered, registered in Malaysia through the NPRA. And for the NPRA, they are not specifically looking for the halal aspects. They are looking more on the efficacy, on the safety, and so on, and also the GMP. And for us to see whether they are halal certified or not, then we will follow through from there, because we are not going to look on the aspects of safety, efficacy, or quality, but we are going to look at the ingredients, ingredients in terms of whatever that they put in. So this is the part that will determine whether it have a status of halal or not. So I think that is the two-tier sort of window that we have to come to when we want to have vaccines being used or being registered in Malaysia. If you want it to be halal, then goes into the what you call the Jakim Halal Committee, and if it is just registered as a safe and efficacious and quality product, then all it needs to have is the registered under NPRA. I think that's my answer.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Amri, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I think this is a fair question, right? As I mentioned in the issue of ethics, how you distribute the vaccine based on availability. Now, the scenario now is that what is we have in mind? I mean, compared to our colleague in Singapore, the vaccine is there already. We even don't have the vaccine at the moment. All right. So I think under the program, we hope that under the national program for COVID-19 infection, so what we need to do is basically to have transparency. What actually the availability and how to actually sort out. All right. Of course, this will take care of in terms of the availability. All right. And if we need to go back, to make sure that the fatwa been followed and so on and so forth, be it, all right, because as what the Dr. Hafiz says, the fundamental is very clear. All right. So to me, if, for example, If you refer back to the experts, I'm sure we can provide the answers at that particular point, whether it can be used or not. Because when you look into clinical situation, all right, availability of the medicine or the vaccine is important. If you don't have the vaccine, nothing else. All right. So these are things that I feel we have to work based on what is available. All right. And of course, our dream, all right, our dream for the future probably halal certified vaccine. That's our dream. All right. But now we know that we can actually ascertain, like what the Prof. Zari says, that we, based on our knowledge, we are able to come up with a position that this is actually halal in nature, even though it's not halal certified. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Hafiz, ada nak respon kah?
Saya nak respon sedikit saya berkaitan dengan keputusan fatwa yang berkaitan dengan imunisasi vaksinasi ni. Kadang-kadang sedikitlah ada berlaku salah faham. So kadang-kadang a few people that think satu vaksin come, so the Majlis Fatwa Kebangsaan akan memutuskan ianya harus tidak. Sebenarnya dia bergantung dalam membuat keputusan fatwa itu bergantung kepada taklimat-taklimat yang disampaikan oleh pakar kesihatan yang daripada expertise on their field lah. Kemudian kita akan menilai juga, mendapatkan maklumat daripada pihak Majlis Keselamatan Dalam Negeri apabila berkaitan dengan isu-isu yang melibatkan keselamatan nyawa. Saya berikan di sini ada beberapa contoh vaksin sebenarnya yang ditolak ataupun yang dikekalkan haram dan tidak boleh digunakan oleh umat Islam. Dalam catatan saya sebagai contoh untuk vaksin meningococcal meningitis bagi orang yang nak pergi mengerjakan haji. Jadi kerajaan Arab Saudi mensyaratkan perlu mengambil pelalian meningococcal itu, dan dia ada dua jenis vaksin di situ. Yang pertamanya, kalau tak silap saya, please correct me ya Prof. Zari, satu yang dinamakan sebagai Mansivac, yang satu lagi dinamakan Monument. Jadi fatwa kita hanya membenarkan vaksin yang bernama Mansivac ini saja yang boleh digunakan. Kerana apa? Kerana bahannya itu free daripada, kita kata, sumber-sumber biologi khinzir, dan ianya diperolehi daripada sumber saintifik. Dan juga dari segi keberkesanannya itu sama seperti jenama vaksin satu lagi, iaitu Monument. Kedua-dua vaksin ini ada dalam pasaran Malaysia, kita di Malaysia. Maknanya, tetapi kita kata, kalau katalah di klinik-klinik dan juga di bawah Kementerian Kesihatan sendiri pun, bagi kita kata pasien Muslim, maknanya akan menggalakkan diambil Mansivac itu. Dan juga keputusan fatwa kebangsaan mengharamkan pengambilan Monument. Kerana apa? Kerana vaksin ini mengandungi daripada sumber biologi khinzir. So dalam kes ini, kedua-dua Mansivac dengan Monument ini dari segi keberkesanannya untuk tahan rintang penyakit itu boleh tahan sama 3 tahun. Maka sebab itu keputusan itu dibuat. Dan satu lagi, ada keputusan fatwa berkaitan dengan penggunaan vaksin BioThrax dan vaksin Rotatec yang diissued pada tahun 2008. Yang mana dibincangkan adakah kita ni berada dalam keadaan bahaya disebabkan serangan biologi. Jadi kalau katalah disebabkan wujudnya serangan biologi ini, maka ada dua vaksin yang boleh untuk menyelamatkan nyawa, kita kata, penduduk Malaysia. Tapi daripada pembentangan pakar dan juga taklimat-taklimat daripada data-data yang accurate, saya katakan bahawa diputuskan yang keadaan kita di Malaysia ini tak sampai ke tahap darurat, masih lagi terkawal dan tak perlu pun kepada vaksin. Jadi vaksin itu ada, kalau katalah digunakan juga, hukumnya adalah haram. Jadi Dr. Azam, saya katakan bahawa membuat keputusan berkaitan dengan vaksin ini seperti yang disebut oleh Tuan Amrahi Buang tadi, maknanya dia bergantung kepada keadaan. Bukan kata apa saja jenama vaksin itu tanpa melihat kepada jenis keperluan penyakit-penyakit, penyakit kritikal, penyakit biasa, mudah kita katakan halal ataupun haram. Oh bukan begitu. Wallahu a'lam.
Okay, terima kasih. Okay, the following questions. There are two questions addressed to Prof. Zari. These questions are from Dr. Badri. What is your take on istihalah process, as it is among the main argument to validify vaccines with non-halal ingredients to be taken by Muslims? How istihalah process could be viewed from pharmaceutical perspective? This is question number one from Dr. Badri. And for question number two from Dr. Badri for Dr. Zahri, as there is already a halal vaccine guideline in the MS 2424, is there any update regarding the Malaysian initiative to develop a halal vaccine industry as been announced by the government some years before? Prof. Zahri, please.
Thank you. I think Dr. Badrini has been following quite closely events that is happening in the what you call fatwa sector. So basically, memang with our interaction with the ulama, with the mufti and so on, there are several criteria. There are several ways of how the fatwa can be formulated. And looking at what are the materials that is in front of them. So you have mentioned the word istikhalah, and then also istislah and so on. These are fiqh examples used by our ulama to see how we can come about with a decision using non-halal material and originally non-halal, and whether it has turned into something that is different from the original source. So it has transformed. In fact, some of them term as chemical transformation. And I think this is quite a logical way of, scientifically speaking, of coming to a conclusion. And I think this has been used several times in giving what you call recommendations in the fatwa. And then on the halal guidelines, I think the Malaysian scientists back in 2010 in USM, they have signed an agreement with Finlay Institute of Cuba to produce the halal meningitis vaccine. In fact, there's a news item which states that halal vaccine developed by the cooperation between USM and Finlay. But in fact, the fatwa team went to Cuba all the way from Malaysia, and looked at the setup, and even interviewed the Cuban scientists, and then try to give recommendations and look at our way of putting the fatwa and so on, and also using the MS 2424 as the guidelines. And I think they are very positive in their attitude, and in fact they have managed to set up a double image sort of factory. That means one on the left is the usual non-halal setup, and on the right they have a completely similar thing, but that is mainly for the halal manufacturing. So I think this is a very useful sort of thing that's happening, but unfortunately the agreement with Finlay didn't take off because of the funding by our authorities that was not made available to further the product. So I think in terms of the capability, scientific capability and so on, and the research infrastructure, it is not rocket science. It can be done locally, but whether we want to invest or not on these things. So I think that's my answer, Dr. Badri. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Zari. I think the question from Dr. Badri addressed to Mr. Amrahi, the demands towards halal vaccines among Muslims has instigated anxiety among the other groups as they are worried that Muslims might reject COVID-19 vaccine on the basis of religion. How do we address this issue? Mr. Amrahi?
I think as I agree with the one that is the information given by Dr. Hafiz. Let's go to the fundamentals of the Sharia. Since we are Muslims, let's go into the fundamental of Sharia. If you go to the fundamental of Sharia, it shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't be an issue at all. Okay, based on the Quran verses mentioned by Dr. Hafiz, based on the Hadith by Dr. So it's all in place. So I think it's not a matter of the Sharia ruling. It's the matter of understanding of the principle. There is a gap, you know. So I think the best that we can do, and I actually told this about how to handle this what you call people who are not going to take vaccine, because they come from different segments. So the strategies will be very different. So I'm sure our authorities have have got that segments. You know, if they do not want to take because of what, so wherever intervention that they will take is based on that segment. So it's not a one that is applicable to all. So it's a different strategies. So I'm sure we're able to do it, you know, with all this. In fact, if we look yesterday, all right, I think I applaud MOH for actually come out, you know, with what you call with a survey, all right, that what you call something that you know that in terms of who actually want the vaccine and who do not want the vaccine. So I suggest make that survey available throughout the population when we're able to get, you know, and we have to pinpoint. We have to pinpoint. But one extra point is that if I'm anti-vaxxers, I please don't, you know, influence others. Let the others, because it's their body. So please, you know, it's your choice. It's fine, but you don't influence others, and don't make decision for them. All right. So I think we have to make strike a balance. And when we say data, we are talking about scientific evidence. Yeah? So in Islam, it's very clear. We're talking about dalil. So what is a dalil? You know, science is all about the art of reasoning. I repeat again, science is all about the art of reasoning, why this thing happen and so on. So anything, you talk about vaccine, you talk about medicine and so on and so on, there is a reason. All right, you have the disease, then you have the cure. And it's all been said by Dr. Hafiz just now. It's very, very clear. So I think as Muslim, as believers, we must have our fundamentals right, and don't confuse others. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. There is a last question by Munawi Ahmad, but it has related from the previous question from Parada Abdul Rahman. What are your views on this matter? At the moment, data on safety, efficacy, and quality of the available vaccines are only based on clinical trials phase 3. Shouldn't MPRA wait for data from phase 4 clinical trial, post-marketing surveillance on long-term adverse reaction before approving the registration? The question addressed to the panelists. Any response from the panelists?
Well, I think when the government have sent the dossier on the vaccine to MPRA, I think they are the persons who can rightfully evaluate whether they need any further phase studies and so on. So I think they will make the decision. For us, of course, we need to have a comprehensive sort of information, data uh, from the government and also from the manufacturers themselves. I think that's my take. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, I
thank
think
you.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
I think the other thing is the fact that we have to be very practical here. On one side, you want the vaccines. All over the world, you want the vaccines. All right. And we have to be based, as I say, based on facts, right? And yes, I agree with the question, yeah, that this has to be looked into, all right. But I think based on previous results and based on the experience of our colleagues in MPRA, they're able to do that. But someone has to make that decision, all right, and that someone will be the DCA lah. All right, the Drug Control Authority. So I think authority come into picture. So if for example, okay, if we feel that we have to go further and something that needs to be done. So that's why I say the pharmacovigilance data is very important. So we are collecting. So I think we have to be fair in reality. Everything is not in dreamland. Okay, we are talking about in reality. All right, what you say? This is something that we have to face. The whole world is facing this thing, and I'm sure in the coming months will be very challenging if we are going to look into what is the situation, right? Because well, this pandemic come after hundred of years, all right, and we're aware that this pandemic actually come from Allah, and we know that Allah hopefully will take it away soon as possible, right? So these are all our things that we can do based on human knowledge and so on. So I think we have to go back to this basic, and it's still the same. For example, in my experience, for example, I feel that that I need to take flu vaccine every year. So I'll take it because I feel that it's necessary to protect my life. All right. And we talk about this thing is something that we have to educate the public, yeah, and something that we have to give a better perspective. All right, I know about the issues occur in the Western and so on, where even the healthcare professionals have different opinion and so on. This is normal. All right, this is normal. But at the end of the day, the authority need to make that decision, and we have to give to the authority. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Amrahi. With that, we would like to give the last opportunity for every speakers to give last few words. We will start with Dr. Hafiz first. If you have a last few words
Okay,
before we
baik.
end this program.
Baik, terima kasih Dr. Azam. Sikit saya nak buat sedikit pembetulan berkaitan dengan sebutan fatwa monumen, vaksin monumen tadi. Sebenarnya telah direvise ya, keputusan monumen pada tahun 2002 dahulu dihukumkan tidak harus. Namun pada tahun 2014 ini hukumnya adalah harus apabila telah didapati yang ianya tidak mengandungi lagi bahan-bahan daripada sumber yang haram. Kemudian satu lagi sedikit masa pada pandangan saya lah, maknanya daripada perspektif hukum, saya nak rumuskan di sini. Kadang-kadang kebanyakan orang ini mereka melihat Islamic medicine ini adalah suatu yang terpisah daripada kita kata rawatan-rawatan moden, yang mana mereka hanya melihat bila kata ada kaitan dengan Islamic medicine ini hanya ditumpukan kepada rawatan herba ataupun pada makanan-makanan yang so-called sunnah food, kemudian orang kata apa, rawatan alternatif, ataupun yang hanya bergantung kepada bacaan-bacaan kita kata ruqyah, salawat. Of course, bentuk-bentuk rawatan alternatif ini kita tidak mengatakan yang ianya salah. Tetapi apa yang ingin saya share di sini ialah satu pandangan yang dirumuskan oleh Profesor Dr. Omar Hassan Kasuli. So he tried to define what is Islamic medicine. Jadi Islamic medicine ditakrifkan is defined as medicine whose basic paradigm, concept, values and procedures do not contradict to Al-Quran and Sunnah. Jadi apa saja bentuk rawatan, termasuk juga kita kata rawatan-rawatan moden yang mungkin yang di-invented by non-Muslim pada hari ini tak jadi isu. Kerana apa? Kerana asalkan as long as tak kontradik dengan Al-Quran dan Sunnah, maka dia dikonsider sebahagian daripada Islamic medicine ataupun sekurang-kurangnya tidak bercanggah dengan Islamic medicine. Maka kerana itu kita perlu broad-minded lah, kembali terbuka dengan mengatakan bahawa Islamic medicine ini sifatnya universal, fleksibel dan menerima pelbagai metod penyiasatan, treatment penyakit dalam kerangka yang lebih luas. So tidak ada lagi orang kata apa separation between kita kata yang dikatakan Islamic medicine dengan sekular, kerana apa saja yang tidak bercanggah dengan Al-Quran dan Sunnah berdasarkan kaedah-kaedah yang telah saya nyatakan tadi, all are included in Islamic medicine. Thank you, Dr. Azam.
Okay, terima kasih. Thank you very much. Mr. Amrahi, please. Last few words.
Okay, my last few words. Okay, we will talk about vaccines. Let's dig into into history. The concept of vaccination is actually in Islam, and the development of vaccine also actually started from the Muslim community, our expert at that time. Yeah, even the so-called mention about Western medicine actually derived from our Islamic scholars. So I think there's no purpose to argue in terms of the principle of vaccination and so on. So as long as it is of quality, safety, and efficacy, I think we should continue, and we look into a choice between personal choice and the good for the public. The good of the public has to come first. So I think we cannot, just talk about ourselves. We have to talk about the public as well as the country. So that's my last words. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amrahi. Prof. Zari, please.
Yeah, I think we need to learn from all the events that's happening, not only to the general public, but also among the scientific committee, among the scientists, doctors, and so on. Because this COVID-19 vaccine and all the SARS and so on, they are a different breed of vaccines altogether. They're modern in terms of they're unconventional, and they are using genetic material in their makeup, and they are unprecedented in terms of the utilization as it is new. So that is why when we try to dig information on the active ingredients, on the nature of the vaccines, on in the medical books or pharmaceutical books in terms of the pharmacopoeia and so on, you can't find it because it's so new. Yeah, it's so new. But for vaccines that is quite old, for polio and meningitis and so on, you can find it. The detail is in the monographs of the pharmacopoeia. But for the COVID and the new vaccines which are genetically based, these are new, and therefore we find that we have to rely on information provided by the scientists themselves, those who are working in the industry, or from people who monitors the events. And of course, there are a lot of hoax and a lot of false information. So we have to really know how to filter all these things. So I think for the time being, we have got all the information that's needed for us to make a decision. So that's all. Wallahu alam. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Zari. With that, we end our forum today on COVID-19 vaccine, halal status and ethical issues in distribution. On behalf of IAIS, we would like to thank again Professor Zari Ismail, Mr. Amrahi Muad, and Dr. Hafiz Mahidin for accepting our invitation. And I think it has been a very interesting and fascinating discussion. And I think the response by viewers with the questions that addressed to us shows that the concern by the public over the subject matter that we are discussing. We would like, on behalf of us, we would also, since this will be the final event for the year of 2020, on behalf of IAIS Malaysia, we would like to wish everyone Happy New Year 2021. We hope COVID-19 numbers will decrease then with this vaccine, and inshallah the issue of the halal status of this vaccine have been discussed by the panelists, and it is up to us to take care of ourselves. Take care, everyone. With that, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much.